All right. Hello and welcome. This is the 5th episode of the Your Body Has Your Back podcast. Woohoo! So this episode is coming straight at you from our hearts, and our stomachs. We are talking about functional foods for your gut and hormone health. We often find in today's world so much of a conversation about what to avoid, what to stop eating, cut out, or banish from your life to heal XYZ dynamic or condition. But our favorite perspective is less about what to avoid and more about what to invite in.
Yes.
That invitation. So food is medicine is a saying that many of us have heard before, and we believe that so strongly and see it in practice every day. Our belief is that real, whole food diets are the most healing foods that you can eat and build the most sturdy foundation for overall health. But not to play favorites or anything, there are some key functional foods we want to highlight that are some heavy hitters in terms of supporting both our gut and hormone health.
And now that you've ideally laid a really supportive foundation with your dietary pattern, and you've made sure that you're eating enough, that you're including adequate amounts of fiber-rich carbs, protein, healthy fats, and non-starchy veggies at meals, and that you're eating consistently throughout the day to support stable blood sugar, this is where we can start to think a little bit more about optimizing our meals and snacks with these specific foods that Abby's mentioning that offer more targeted health benefits. This is the fun stuff. This is, really some of the things that we love to work on with clients because we get to really harness the medicinal benefits of these specific foods. So functional foods, as we refer to these foods as, are technically defined as foods that offer potential health benefits beyond their basic nutritional value. So different compounds and different constituents in these foods that we're going to talk about today can actually support or alter physiological health processes in the body to help reduce symptoms and to help provide protection against the development of disease. I have to say, in going through this functional food episode where we're going to highlight all of our favorite things, it was really hard to kind of pick favorites because there's just so many amazing, therapeutic foods out there. But we're really going to highlight, our top choices or some of our favorite functional foods. We're going to talk a little bit about what their potential benefits are, how we encourage clients to use these in their day-to-day lives for supporting different hormone and digestive health concerns. And we're just really excited to kind of geek out over all things food.
This is really where nutrition turns into medicine, because one of the things that I say a lot and know Jilly believes is it's not nutrition until you eat it. So we actually have to eat these foods to really get the benefits. We can talk about them all the live long day. And that's really when we get to kind of geek out on some of these really powerful foods and also talk about what are fun ways to incorporate them, to eat them, to jazz them up and really get the benefits. That's really why we do what we do.
Exactly. Food is really foundational. And to reiterate what Abby said a minute ago, health is really about what you are eating, what you are adding in, how you are supporting and optimizing your health with, nutrients and different food compounds. It's not about what you eliminate and remove. And naturally, if you're focusing on the foundational things and then you're optimizing meals and snacks in a really intentional way to support your needs, that is where you are going to catapult your health in a major, major way in terms of seeing big improvements with symptoms.
Totally agree.
So let's dive in and talk about our first functional food. So our first functional food that we want to dive into is broccoli sprouts. Broccoli sprouts are those little, kind of hairy looking sprouts that you might see at the grocery store, kind of near the herb section usually. And these little sprouts are rich in fiber, a variety of vitamins, minerals, and they are technically part of that cruciferous vegetable category or family. They are very, very rich in glucosinolates, which we discussed briefly in episode 4, which are precursors for the powerhouse phytochemical sulforaphane. So a lot of why we are recommending that you include broccoli sprouts is related to this kind of specific compounds, this phytochemical sulforaphane. Sulforaphane, as a little review, it activates an important stress response pathway in the body, and it boosts our antioxidant capacity and it lowers inflammation. It's a potent anti-inflammatory. And it also helps to support phase 2 liver detoxification. If you're just tuning in and you don't know a lot about detoxification, or you've heard some kind of confusing things about the word detoxification, definitely tune into episode 4 for a little refresher. But sulforaphane specifically helps to upregulate phase 2 detoxification in the liver, which is kind of the breaking down, one piece of the breaking down and removal of toxins from the body. Sulforaphane helps to promote healthy estrogen metabolism and detoxification. So again, in the liver, which is absolutely essential for healthy menstrual cycles, for reducing things like PMS and period-related symptoms, and for reducing the risk for things like estrogen-sensitive cancers. Broccoli sprouts have also been found to boost the antioxidant glutathione, which is considered the master antioxidant in the body. So again, anti-inflammatory benefits. Broccoli sprouts contain compounds that support metabolic health. And we even have some studies specific to gut health that have found consuming broccoli sprouts can help with eradicating pathogens in the gut like H. pylori, and they can also be protective against things like stomach ulcers. Sulforaphane and other compounds in broccoli sprouts help to protect the brain, support healthy cognition, immune function. Is there anything that broccoli sprouts don't do?
Seriously.
So broccoli sprouts are amazing. And really, the cool thing is that you don't need to eat a lot of them, right? So just a handful or a couple ounces a day has been found to produce a lot of these benefits. So it's very easy to grab a handful of broccoli sprouts and throw it into your breakfast bowl or your salad at lunch, or throw it into a wrap and really, really kind of pack in that anti-inflammatory punch, and to get a lot of that, sulforaphane eventually down the line when, some compounds are converted into that. Do you have any favorite ways to encourage clients to use broccoli sprouts, Abby?
I do. Well, first, it's funny the way that you refer to broccoli sprouts of like a handful. I refer to them, I'm like a 1 to 2 inch square, because I picture it like, so if you've ever seen broccoli sprouts, they come in this like plastic container, and they remind me of like those like squares of grass that you like unroll from the back of like a truck to like put on your lawn.
Like
and
turf.
I imagine just like, turf, there we go. I imagine just like cutting out like a square of them. But I've had clients been like, what do you mean by a square? I'm like, that doesn't translate to other humans. Okay.
Oh my gosh. That's
so 1 to 2
funny.
squares. I like to add them into smoothies.
Oh, I love that.
Like,
that's such an easy.
I really like the taste of them in like other foods, or just kind of like on top of like an avocado toast, or like in a salad or things like that. But they've been kind of a staple in like my smoothie routine. And I'll do like a nice like 2 inch or 2 ounce little chunk in there, and they like blend up into nothing. And it's a little bit of like, then you can call your smoothie like a detox smoothie. I usually add some like frozen cauliflower in there and a banana. And then I've been really into adding the chocolate salt from LMNT in there.
I love that.
Oh my God, it's so good, that like combination. But I'm like, oh, this is like a pretty deep detox smoothie. Like, look at that. And it tastes like chocolate.
I mean, is there anything better?
Totally.
That's amazing.
Also, I'll never look at them the same. I'm just going to be like, oh, you hairy little sprouts.
Hairy little sprouts. I'm going to throw you in my chocolate smoothie. Oh my gosh. Yeah, so broccoli sprouts are amazing, and I think they're at the top of the list for both Abby and I when we're supporting clients with gut health issues, with hormone issues. And you can tell by the way we're talking about broccoli sprouts that the benefits are widespread. So I think we would both really say that incorporating these would be helpful for anyone.
100%. Yeah. Man, woman, child, like that's the beautiful thing about food too, is when I think there's a lot of, in the functional medicine world, the challenge of like, how do we support our kids? And, can they take this supplement or that supplement, or like kind of some of these higher level things that don't translate as well to like pediatrics, whereas food really does. And this is truly a medicinal food that can be really fun for kids, or throw it into their smoothies and they won't even know that it's in there.
I I love that. That's such a good point. And I think ideally whenever we can utilize food, we love to do that. And I think this is just a perfect example of where you can really pack a punch nutritionally and get those health benefits in a pretty kind of easy and discreet way. And something I want to point out about broccoli sprouts too is that research has actually found that the bioavailability of sulforaphane, that beneficial compound, is significantly higher in broccoli sprouts, so the actual food, when compared taking sulforaphane in supplement form. So this is an example of where a supplement actually probably isn't worth your money because it's not going to do as much as eating the food itself. And sometimes the opposite is true, where we really need kind of that potent form and supplement form of a bioactive compound to get the health benefit. But I just think it's cool that the food itself is the best way to, bring in those compounds.
I love that.
So next on our list is ground flaxseed. Ground flaxseed is rich in soluble fiber, insoluble fiber, omega-3 fatty acids, specifically your plant omega-3 fatty acids or alpha-linoleic acid. It's rich in antioxidants and compounds called lignans, which we'll talk about in a minute. Ground flaxseed is, and to take a step back too, I say ground flaxseed specifically because we are able to actually absorb all of the nutrients and beneficial compounds of ground flax, not the whole flaxseed itself. I typically recommend, and I think Abby, you do too, but you can tell me kind of how you approach this with clients as well. But typically I'll have people buy the whole flaxseed and store it in the freezer or fridge, and then actually just grind it up in a little coffee grinder, before consuming it. So you can actually, absorb the beneficial compounds that I'm mentioning.
Yeah, I cheat a little bit. That would be like in practice, what I tell clients. Absolutely. But then I'm like, but if you just buy the ground and keep them in the fridge, it's probably pretty equivalent. But we definitely want to keep these things in the fridge. I think that's some of my clients know that when they come, some don't. So these are they're delicate oils, and anything that has a kind of anti-inflammatory oil quality to it from a delicate food, especially once it's ground, because we've cracked open its little protective seed, we definitely want to be storing it in the fridge so that we are really kind of maintaining the quality of it. But to Jilly's practice, that would be the most recommended. If you're coming to the dark side, the lazy side, like myself, I'm confessing I have ground flax seeds pre-ground in my fridge that I used this morning.
It's okay. It's okay. You're getting them in though.
I'm
right?
outing my shadow.
That's important. And I will often actually have clients that I'll talk about flax seeds and we'll mention, oh yeah, I have flaxseed in my pantry. It's been sitting there for ages, and I'm like, throw it out.
It's gone.
No, I never want clients to have to throw out or waste food, but I think it is not talked about enough that, flaxseed is, and especially to Abby's point, when it's ground up, it is very vulnerable to oxidation. So exposure to light, oxygen, heat causes oxidation, and these healthy compounds become not as healthy, and some not great byproducts are actually produced that can induce inflammation. So we just want to minimize that and just reap all the wonderful benefits. So some of those benefits of, including ground flaxseed that has not oxidized includes healthy blood sugar control, regular bowel movements. So because ground flaxseed is a good source of both insoluble and soluble fiber, it can help with promoting bowel regularity. It's also helpful for balancing hormones and supporting detoxification. Particularly, it's helpful for supporting healthy estrogen levels because it's promoting bowel regularity. So you're eliminating all of those estrogen waste products that we talked a lot about in the last episode. And because it is rich in lignans. So lignans are phytoestrogens. They are plant estrogens. When I say that, sometimes people freak out a little bit when they hear me say plant estrogens. I don't know if the same goes for you, Abby. So that can sound like a little bit scary. And I think mostly because there's a lot of confusing misinformation out there around plant estrogens and phytoestrogens in general. What I will tell you, let's clear the air right here. So phytoestrogens are weak plant estrogens, and they actually kind of act like estrogen adaptogens in that if you have estrogen that is too high, these plant estrogens can actually replace the more potent estrogens and interact with estrogen receptors and basically balance out that high estrogen to reduce high estrogen symptoms. If you have low estrogen, same thing. It can interact with estrogen receptors and actually kind of increase or balance overall estrogen levels in the body and reduce low estrogen symptoms. So it's actually great in both situations, high estrogen, low estrogen, and for just general hormone balancing. We are a fan. There's also some research that has found that incorporating flaxseed regularly, up to 1 to 2 tablespoons daily, helps to improve ovulation rates, which is super cool. And there's also some data showing that incorporating flaxseed can help with reducing acne. Lots and lots of benefits here. And the 1 to 2 tablespoon recommendation is typically the benchmark I give clients for, really targeted support. You can, of course, incorporate it, here and there whenever you feel like. But if we're looking to use this therapeutically, we're going to want to incorporate it 1 to 2 tablespoons very consistently. And this is going to be great sprinkling on yogurt, throw it into a smoothie. You could make, energy bites with it, all sorts of good stuff.
Yeah. We'll talk about chia seeds, just hint what's coming up. And I feel like these play really well together in like a chia pudding or something that we lovingly like to call like faux oatmeal, which is kind of a mimics like an oatmeal consistency, chia seeds, ground flax seeds, hemp hearts in there, got a little bit more protein punch to it and more kind of fibrous punch to it, especially of that kind of gut-loving fiber and detox-loving fiber. So those, we can get creative with how we get these into the diet. I think my favorite way personally would be I've been on a big smoothie kick. So everything goes into the smoothie is like kind of the way that I treat it.
I love that. Pack it all in. You don't even notice. Tastes like chocolate. Sign me up. So we're big fans of ground flaxseed over here. And really, again, I think flaxseed can be helpful and beneficial in a lot of cases. In terms of the gut health and hormone clients that Abby and I work with, anyone really dealing with bowel irregularities, so constipation, loose stools, skin issues like acne, and anyone dealing with symptoms of estrogen dominance or high estrogen, which can often manifest with period-related symptoms. So, mood issues, skin issues, digestive issues, things that pop up cyclically pre-period, this can be really helpful for you.
Yeah. And really, Jillian and I were talking about before we hopped on of both kind of chia seeds and ground flax seeds are in terms of like kind of gut symptoms. Interesting because it's like, wait, she said it can help with constipation, but it also helps loose stool. Like, aren't those, we would think like one food would help one and one food would help the other, but they're really unique foods that actually kind of create like an even playing field for everybody in there. So it's just a really great kind of gut reinforcing food from symptoms, but also anyone who just has really robust gut health or robust hormone health, like helps us to stay there. So that's also the properties of these foods. Not only we're going to highlight, who they might helpful, who might be symptomatic, but if you're not symptomatic and you're just looking to stay well, these are the heavy hitters to like put in your box. I'm trying to go with like sports analogies. And it's like,
are we on the sports analogies?
I jumped. I'm not going to stay there though. I don't know enough about sports.
No, you bring up a really good point though. I think just maintenance, and you don't have to deal with these symptoms. If you do deal with some of these symptoms we're describing, great to have in your toolbox, toolkit. But just for general health maintenance and health promotion, these would be awesome as well. So next up, we have raw carrots with the skin on.
Next in our category is what I would consider kind of an overlooked category of foods that we briefly touched on in episode 4, but that's the category of bitters. So bitter foods help to prime our digestive system to help with optimal digestion. They help to reduce post-meal digestive symptoms and even aid in detoxification. So there we're talking about the gut and the hormones due to their activation of the bitter receptors in our mouth and our digestive organs. So I like to think about these foods essentially like shout down to our lower gut that food is coming. So get ready. So that's causing our body to actually secrete more digestive chemicals that are so important for optimal digestion. So we're talking about stomach acid, bile, digestive enzymes, and these kind of chemicals in the digestive process, when they're primed and ready, make the process and experience of digestion a much smoother process, aka less symptoms. So if you're experiencing digestive symptoms, in particular, bitters are really helpful for people experiencing bloating, gas, burping, kind of indigestion or sour stomach might be like a slang way that we might describe some of those symptoms, heartburn, constipation. Bitters help to get those digestive secretions, the chemical properties of digestion kind of flow in a little bit more, which is often where a lot of these symptoms come from. If we've got some congestion in those production of those chemical digestions of those stomach acid, bile, digestive enzymes. So we really like to aim to incorporate one bitter food at most or all meals. So this might be new to some of us, of thinking about eating a bitter food at all or most meals. Might be like, holy moly, that's a lot of bitter food. So maybe it's just once a day that you start to incorporate, but you might even be doing it already and not know it. The more bitters we start to incorporate, the more we're really starting to prime that digestive system. So what are bitter foods? Bitter foods are the categories of bitter greens. So we could think about arugula, endive, dandelion greens, radicchio, citrus and citrus zest. So the actual juice of the citrus, but also the zest of the citrus. So this is where in baking, utilizing like orange zest or lemon zest or the zest of limes, or in juicing, if you're a juicer, to actually keep some of the rind. We always want to use organic because it's a rind, but using some of the rind in the juices, or even slicing some of the rind off and putting it into your lemon water, so that some of those kind of chemical constituents, the bitters that are in that rind, can actually seep into the water that we're drinking or the tea that we made. Cranberries are another. These are maybe a little bit harder to find outside of like the Thanksgiving season, but I've been able to find them like frozen at Trader Joe's or sometimes at Whole Foods, and you can kind of stock up on them. A little bit goes a long way. You don't need your entire smoothie to be chock full of cranberries, but just maybe like a small handful in there, so you're not really overpowered with that bitter taste. Fermented foods actually are bitter foods, that kind of vinegar based to fermented foods. So those might be something that you're already incorporating. We're going to speak more on those in a minute, but those can qualify as a bitter food in your meals. Vinegars, so that's the base of maybe salad dressings or sauces that might be a part of your meals. Love this one. Coffee and matcha actually have bitter qualities to them, like let's give it up. And cocoa actually has bitter properties to it as well. So we can love up on those foods, knowing that we're doing some good for ourselves. And then we also can incorporate bitter tinctures. So these are more, I guess, in like the supplement world. You might be familiar with some of these bitters, like if you go to like a fancy cocktail bar and they add bitters to like a Manhattan or bitters to other cocktails, they're very similar. But they're really the concentrates of some of these kind of bitter qualities. And you can actually take them diluted in water, or you can take them like we do, which is like straight into our mouth because we're crazy people and love bitters. So they're intense in terms of flavor, and you're definitely going to feel like, holy moly, that's bitter. But they can be incredibly helpful taken before meals. They can be incredibly helpful taken right after a meal in terms of reducing digestive or post-meal digestive symptoms. Or if you experience like heartburn or indigestion or burping or slow motility in between meals, you can take them in between meals too. To call out my brother, I will travel with bitters in like a little spray container when I go like out to dinners and things. And sometimes he'll have heartburn and be like, give me those gross spray things that you sometimes make me take. I'm like, yes, the wonderful medicinal things that I carry in my bag all the time. But within like 30 minutes, he doesn't have heartburn anymore. And he doesn't get it that frequently. I won't call him out too hard on that. But on the occasions that he does, bitters are always very helpful. He does not enjoy the process, but 30 minutes later, he's happy as a camper.
I love that. And I too travel with my bitters, and they make a huge difference because sometimes just, eating out or being out of your routine can throw things off. So that can be another great thing to have in the toolkit, even if it's not, something you're using at every meal every day. You certainly could. And there's times where we recommend that for clients, but it's also just great for, kind of disruptions to the routine if you're under more stress and digestion is a little off, for the additional support. And I think something I love about bitters too is just the fact that they are enhancing your endogenous production of digestive secretions. So they're working with your body. They're working with how your body already wants to work, and they're just enhancing that versus, digestive enzymes that you're taking in supplement form, or, supplemental betaine or stomach acid, which I consider those to be a little bit more of heavy hitters. And those are definitely warranted in many situations where clients need that support temporarily while we're working to address root causes. But it's always really wonderful when we can just work with the body and, what it produces naturally. So they're just, super gentle.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that you pointed out to me like a couple months ago too, which is great, is in pregnancy, actually, there are certainly a lot of women experiencing heartburn or acid reflux, whatever we want to kind of call that burning sensation. And there's not all bitters are safe for pregnancy, but there is a brand, Urban Moonshine, that has it's the chamomile version of them. It's called like their calm tummy, right? Isn't that like what they call? Those ones are safe in pregnancy and can be really helpful tools to use if you're pregnant and experiencing heartburn or that indigestion or burping or just feeling like food's like sitting in your stomach and not kind of going down, because sometimes there's a traffic jam that starts to occur. So those can be great tools to be able to kind of use. Urban Moonshine's like sold at Whole Foods. You want to buy that specific one if you're pregnant, anyone if you're not.
I love that. That's such a great point. And actually, sorry, I was going to say something, but you're going into, sorry, Will, you're going into how to use it in your daily routine. I'll wait.
Oh yeah. So how would we incorporate bitters into our daily routine, especially if we're aiming to have them at most meals or all meals? So this is where, getting creative with those foods. Maybe some of these are new foods. So using a bitter green like arugula or endive as the base or mixed into some of the greens. So if you're used to having romaine or if you're used to having mixed greens, maybe you just add in some of those bitter greens so they're not the entire main flavor of your dish, but there's some kind of additions of them. Or you can use kind of endive to serve like chicken salad or as like a vehicle for maybe the protein that you're having. And that kind of bitter actually blends in and plays nicely with some of the flavors. Maybe you even add some dried cranberries in there. And oh my gosh, now you've gotten two bitters, a little sweetness, but who knows? No, we won't hang ourselves up on that. Adding certainly lemon to water, like we were saying, with a little bit of that kind of citrus rind in there. Using kind of ginger, which actually is a bitter that didn't make it into my list, but using ginger as in teas. Cocoa, certainly we can think of many ways to use that in terms of cocoa into making your own hot cocoa. This is the season. We're kind of going into the fall, winter, maybe adding a little bit of sweetness in there, but using fresh cocoa or cacao, which would be kind of a little bit more of an unrefined cocoa that's going to be rich in those kind of bitter compounds. We can certainly get creative and add even like dandelion greens in that kind of salad. So we can get funky. Fermented foods, just like a tablespoon or two is really all we need in terms of the dose for those to really make an impact in terms of the the benefits of those fermented foods, which Jilly's going to talk on in just a minute. But adding those into the foods, the meals that we're incorporating can be tremendously helpful. Jilly, any other ideas that you have for bitters into meals?
Those were all such good ones. I think the one thing that comes to mind for me is fennel seeds. So fennel seeds are great for, kind of stimulating these digestive secretions and sort of fall into this bitter category. And I like using fennel seeds because you can incorporate them very easily. I typically recommend clients just chew on a couple fennel seeds before a meal, and you get that, warming, burning sensation. You can kind of feel your digestive system kicking into gear. So just one other easy idea, but I love all of the ones that you've mentioned.
And actually, to just tag on to the bitters, we wanted to call out a little specifically, shout out to a major bitter food, apple cider vinegar. Notably a very bitter taste for anyone that's tried apple cider vinegar. And it's really shown to help to support digestion by stimulating those natural digestive secretions, those chemical digestive substances we were just talking about, stomach acid, bile, digestive enzymes, and really help with bloating, gas, burping, distension. It can even help to alleviate constipation and loose stools, particularly if those are from maldigestion, lacking the production of those compounds. What's interesting is it also can help to lower blood sugar and support blood sugar balance after meals. So this is shown that apple cider vinegar taken before a meal or when it's incorporated in a meal as part of the meal, such as maybe in the salad dressing or the sauce, helps to have a significant impact on reducing the blood sugar impact of that meal. It also contains beneficial bacteria that provide beneficial compounds to the gut environment. And really all we're looking for in terms of apple cider vinegar is about 1 to 2 teaspoons. Before meals in the morning, you can dilute that in a little bit of water. You can, again, incorporate that into the actual meal itself. We don't need to be chugging a whole bottle of apple cider vinegar. Please don't do that. That will not feel very good to you. And if you do utilize apple cider vinegar, like dilute it into water before meals, and it creates a lot of burning or discomfort, don't use it. That's just, if it doesn't feel good, pivot away or incorporate it like into the base of your salad dressing and kind of utilize it is incorporated into your foods. And that might help to mitigate some of that burning sensation. But if it doesn't feel good, don't use it.
It's a great tip. And I think you can apply that to all of these things. If it doesn't
Agreed.
feel good, ditch it.
Yep.
So our next functional food is raw carrots with the skin on. Emphasis on the skin piece, so unpeeled carrots. Raw unpeeled carrots are a really rich source of the insoluble fiber cellulose, which helps to promote healthy bowel movements and elimination, which is super important for preventing, the reabsorption of toxins and estrogen waste products, like we've talked a lot about in this episode and really a lot in the previous episode. Carrots are also a really great source of the soluble fiber pectin, which specifically feeds beneficial, healthy gut bacteria. It also helps to regulate blood sugar, and it promotes satiety, so feeling full and satisfied after meals. The reason that we do not want to peel our carrots, which sometimes clients are appalled with when I mention not peeling the carrots, is because 50% or more of the carrot's phytonutrients, so the beneficial plant compounds, that have great antioxidant action, are found within the skin. So we don't want to peel and, toss all of those beneficial plant compounds. We want to wash the carrots well. We do not want to peel them. And ideally, eating them raw is going to help you to get even more of those benefits. So in terms of who this would be helpful for, in terms of incorporating the, carrots with the skin on that are raw, really anyone, again, at the end of the day could benefit from this, but specifically anyone with issues around bowel regularity, anyone, again, with PMS symptoms, so thinking about some imbalances with estrogen metabolism and elimination, so cyclical acne, mood swings, period cramps. The raw carrots are really helpful, and I would encourage you to consider thinking about incorporating a little bit of that raw carrot even daily. So the easiest ways to do that would be, just shredding up some raw carrot and throwing it into a salad, a bowl, and a wrap. I'm also a big fan of making a big raw carrot salad or a slaw, so I can kind of batch prep it, leave it in the fridge, and then just, take a scoop and throw it into, meals throughout the week. So I'm getting a little bit of that almost daily.
And I could even imagine maybe the sauce that you put or the dressing that you're putting on that might have some apple cider vinegar in it, potentially.
100%. Of course.
Look at that. We just combined functional foods. I also would argue. Yeah. I was going to say, I'd also argue for like a little dirt never hurt anybody, right?
No, I mean, I feel like the people probably get skeeved out by this, but I feel like a little bit of that exposure is really healthy, good, supportive for the gut microbiota. So yeah, little dirt never killed anyone. We want to, give it a good little rinse, but definitely do not fear the carrot skin.
Correct. So Our next functional food is Ceylon cinnamon. So I always appreciate when a functional food kind of falls in the familiarity category, even though we're going to spin this one a little bit, because Ceylon cinnamon is actually not the same as regular old cinnamon that we might have in our pantry. It's a little less sweet, and it actually comes from a totally separate plant. This is kind of the education that Jilly has helped to. I was like, oh, wait, it's not the same plant. She's like, no, it's not. I'm like, okay, I'm learning too. So it's got a little bit more of a kick to it. And it's great to use as kind of a sprinkle on top of foods to add a little bit more of that like cinnamon spiceness, I would say. But it doesn't translate as well to cinnamon used in like traditional recipes, like substituting it entirely for all the cinnamon that's going to go in your like cinnamon apple muffin. So the flavor is a little different. Just FYI, we wanted to put this as like a big disclaimer on the cinnamon here. But what we would love, you guys need to try it. And then you have to message us on Instagram and tell us how you would describe this cinnamon, because we went back and forth as to how we would describe it. And that's as best as we got right there. So we need our troops to try it and kind of compare to like, how does Ceylon cinnamon differ from like regular old cinnamon? And let us know, because Ceylon cinnamon is really high in antioxidants. And it's really been found to support insulin sensitivity. So we're talking about blood sugar and helping to support our body's utilization of blood sugar through the hormone insulin. And it really has been also shown to help to support lowering blood sugar after meals. So this is the benefit of when we utilize Ceylon cinnamon in meals. So maybe adding it to smoothies or oats, or maybe chia puddings, yogurt, energy bites. You could put it on top of your teas, or maybe if you like a little cinnamon in your coffee or on a matcha or a chai, something like that, where it's got a little bit more of that spice quality to it. But we can get creative with the ways that we add it in, especially once we try it and get what this flavor profile is for ourselves.
And I will say, I've had clients report so many different things about their thoughts on the differences between, Ceylon cinnamon and regular cinnamon, which is, I think it's cassia cinnamon. I forget exactly what the name for the type of regular cinnamon is, but I think it's cassia and Ceylon. And there may be other types too, but those are, I think, the two that we're referring to here. And some clients actually like the Ceylon cinnamon better and find that it almost tastes sweeter, while myself and many other clients are like, oh man, no, I need the regular stuff sometimes, but I want to get the benefits of the Ceylon cinnamon. So play around with it and report back.
Because then we can always combine it. That's, the beauty of like a little bit of both.
I love that. Best of both worlds there. Mm-hmm. So next up, for functional foods, we have fatty fish, which is really a category of foods. But fatty fish are going to be things like wild-caught salmon, sardines, tuna, mackerel, halibut. Essentially fatty fish that is rich in omega-3 fatty acids, EPA, and DHA. So fatty fish in general is just a great bioavailable protein source, but the omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA specifically, are why these guys are so beneficial. So the consumption of these regularly is associated with better blood sugar control and improved insulin resistance, which Abby was just talking a little bit about what that means in terms of the Ceylon cinnamon. Incorporating fatty fish is associated with improved mood and lower levels of anxiety, lower levels of inflammation, also lower androgens, which is really relevant for women that have PCOS, that have elevated levels of androgens, which is a really classic, kind of dynamic that can drive symptoms. But really, lots of women can deal with high androgens, and that can drive, acne, head hair loss, unwanted hair growth. So fatty fish can actually lower inflammation, which helps to lower androgens and help promote healthier androgen metabolism. Eating fatty fish is associated with better egg quality and ovulation rates, which is super cool. So if you're thinking about, preconception or fertility, this is really relevant for you. And generally aiming for at least 2 servings of fatty fish a week is an amazing goal to really kind of get in more of these beneficial omega-3 fatty acids.
Love that. Love those fatty fish.
Love those fatty fish. And, what I think is funny is that Abby and I live in Boston, which is obviously on the water, and it can actually be challenging to access good quality fish around here, just at supermarkets and things like that. There are some good ways, but it can be really expensive. So want to provide you with just a couple tips if you don't have access to good quality, fish locally, or, if we're trying to kind of maintain a certain budget. So for quality fish, I often recommend some of the fish delivery, services or subscriptions. So Sizzlefish, Catch Sitka, and the Wild Alaskan Salmon Company are great ones that you could order boxes of wild-caught, sustainable, quality fatty fish from. And then we also have our pouched, our tinned fish from companies like Wild Planet that are super affordable and you can utilize to make, salmon salad, tuna salad, sardine salad. Abby has an amazing recipe for sardine sweet potato cakes on her Instagram, which we can link for you guys. Mm-hmm. That is a great way to kind of dip your toes into the sardine world if you're skeeved out by that at all. But lots of ways that you can incorporate fatty fish on a budget. If you live in a place that isn't on the ocean, all sorts of options.
Yeah. And these would be also a really significant food for your little ones too. These are considered first foods, where, we want to be thinking about the formation of the brain. So not only kind of during pregnancy, but also in first foods around that 4-month or 6-month mark. Sardines, we might be grossed out by them just because of their reputation, I suppose. But our little ones are not, and often we'll kind of gobble them up, especially if you mix them with a little bit of avocado mayo or some of those sweet potatoes or things like that. So we might have to just kind of put aside our own preconceived notions about them and then mixing them with other potent flavors. So mixing them with olives or sun-dried tomatoes, or again, mayonnaise. Clearly I rep mayonnaise really hard over here. The avocado mayonnaise, of course, or some green sauce, actually, what we highlighted in our last episode that really has a potent flavor.
I actually even like adding mustard, whole grain mustard, which might skeeve some people out, but I'll get the sardines packed in olive oil. I'll kind of, mash them up and then add a little bit of whole grain mustard, maybe a squeeze of lemon, and just jazz them up with those types of flavors. And you might surprise yourself in terms of actually liking them.
Yeah. I was raised in a family. We had a lot of smoked fish, smoked bluefish pate growing up. So I'm sardine schmardines.
Give me all the smelly fish.
Yeah, seriously. Come over to my house. I'll feed you.
Oh my gosh. I love it. So fatty fish, really incredible. Again, really anyone can benefit from incorporating fatty fish regularly. When it comes to gut health, lowering inflammation is a huge focus. Same thing with hormones, especially if there are, again, those cyclical symptoms, period-related symptoms like cramping, or if you're thinking about fertility and preconception. So there are no downsides when it comes to the gut and hormones of lowering inflammation.
Yeah. And I think even a plug for that too, all of this conversation that kind of gets a little tense in the social media world of omega-6 oils and canola oils and things like that. The alternative to those, the solution to those is increasing your fatty fishes, your omega-3 fatty acid rich foods. And that is, we are, again, more on the side of invitation in than necessarily ostracizing out, but definitely looking at what are the types of oils that we're consuming and where can we emphasize those anti-inflammatory omega-3 foods. And certainly kind of oils can fall in that category too, but we want to lead with food first in terms of the healthy fats.
I love that. Such a good point. Always bringing it back to what can I add? How can I nourish? How can I optimize at the end of the day?
Absolutely. All right. So moving on, aloe vera. So aloe has been used kind of medicinally for thousands of years, and it's probably best known for soothing and healing your sunburn on vacation or a scrape. But it also actually has similar soothing effects on the gut. We definitely want to get aloe that you can consume orally though. Don't use your sunburn stuff to put into your smoothie. That would be not a good move. Aloe contains anti-inflammatory compounds. It's high in minerals, B vitamins, and even polyphenols that all help to promote the beneficial health impacts of aloe. So some of the benefits of aloe, it actually helps to build the mucous membrane, which is a key barrier in the gut. So it reduces inflammation in the GI tract. And we're really kind of talking about like that leaky gut conversation, that kind of like trendy term, which is a very legitimate term. We call it intestinal permeability, like in the kind of white coats of sorts. But we really want to help to strengthen that barrier to the gut. So in terms of experiences, it can be really helpful to soothe heartburn, GERD, acid reflux, whatever you're kind of calling that experience of burning or constriction in the upper chest. Could also be experienced as like a sore throat or just tension, even maybe pain at the breastbone. Those are all kind of traditional and non-traditional symptoms of GERD, acid reflux, kind of upper GI symptoms. It's high in potassium too, which is that really mineral that we want to be emphasizing for kind of hydration, for utilization of carbohydrates, for balancing blood sugar, for so many different functions in the body. And we can get that from aloe also. And it's also rich in polyphenols and polysaccharides. And those actually help to feed the microbiome and actually produce anti-inflammatory short-chain fatty acids. So we're really doing a whole lot of things with aloe vera, which is pretty cool. So my favorite brand is George's Aloe. So it might go a little bit more into like the supplement category than necessarily like a food that you're going to like sit down and snack on. It's really just a liquid that tastes like water. And for someone experiencing symptoms like acid reflux or GERD or heartburn or any of those, really adding in about like 2 to 3 ounces into your water 1 to 3 times per day would be more of the kind of soothing level that we would want to help to actually calm and soothe that inflammation. If you're just using it for kind of general prevention or general kind of gut support, anti-inflammatory support, probably just about 3 or 4 ounces, like once a day. You could put it into your like mineral elixir or your kind of electrolyte rich beverage where maybe you're adding some kind of magnesium and maybe a little pinch of salt to add some sodium. So you're getting those 3 major electrolytes that we've talked about before. Do you have any more favorite companies for aloe outside of George's Aloe?
I love George's Aloe, and the couple other that I love are Lily of the Desert and Lakewood.
That's right.
Both of which you can typically find, at least around the Boston area and Massachusetts, you can find at Whole Foods. And you can order on Amazon, which is great. So they're accessible. But those are just a couple other brands that I like. One other really cool benefit that I think is just exciting to point out is that there was a small study done a few years ago that was done in women with Hashimoto's that looked at, I think it was consuming like 50 milliliters of whole leaf aloe daily. I think it was the whole leaf. And over a 3-month period, these women had significant reductions in thyroid antibodies and significant improvements, I think like up to 60% in actual thyroid function as measured by TSH. So pretty powerful. And I think this is, related to all of these different compounds that Abby has outlined in terms of, the anti-inflammatory properties, the things that feed the gut, support the gut lining, which is just really, really cool if you're someone that struggles with, thyroid dynamics, specifically, a thyroid autoimmune condition.
Love that. That's a very powerful study.
Next up, we have fermented foods. Fermented foods are created through the activity of live organisms, so naturally occurring or added bacteria or yeasts, and they are made through controlled microbial growth. Fermentation has been something that has been around for ages and ages and ages, and it used to really primarily be used to preserve the shelf life of foods and the, food stability. But more recently, fermented foods are gaining a lot of popularity. There's a lot of research on fermented foods, and specifically fermented foods that are containing live, active cultures because we are finding that there are a myriad of health benefits that can come from these live active cultures in food. So some of the specific health benefits around fermented foods include actually, bringing these live active cultures into the digestive tract. So if you're trying to incorporate a fermented food, you want to make sure that the bacteria, the live active cultures, are actually live. There's lots of tricky, funky marketing out there, like when you see, live active cultures or, probiotics added to granola or, random things that we're not actually getting those live components. Doesn't mean that there can't be some other potential benefits there, but in terms of the live active cultures, that's what we're talking about here. Incorporating these foods can actually help to improve and increase microbial diversity with healthy gut bacteria and really support the function of good bacteria. Fermented foods are actually more digestible, so more easy to digest because of that fermentation process. And incorporating these foods also has been found to help support antioxidant pathways, support the production of beneficial short-chain fatty acids, and they also help with the production of things like B vitamins, vitamin K, magnesium, zinc. So including these foods actually helps with the production of these important vitamins. Research has found that fermented foods have positive impacts on things like blood pressure, cholesterol, glucose metabolism, so lots of important metabolic parameters. And there's really just so many benefits across the board for incorporating these fermented foods. One specific study that I want to highlight because it's very new, it came out last year, and I just think it's so cool, was a study that looked at the effects of a high fiber diet versus a high fermented foods diet and the impact on microbial diversity and different inflammatory markers that support and modulate immune responses. So this was a shorter kind of 10-week study, and people were randomized into either the fermented foods group where they were including a serving of fermented foods daily or the higher fiber group, which that was their focus for the 10 weeks. And at the end of 10 weeks, the group that was eating the serving of fermented foods daily actually had statistically significant increases in beneficial microbial diversity and decreases in many inflammatory markers compared to the high fiber group. So powerful. What I want to point out is that the thought process here is not that, a high fiber diet is not beneficial. The point here is really that, fiber may take a little bit longer to actually modulate some of these, things in the gut and to have these benefits. Fiber, if you haven't realized based off our conversations, is fundamental. But I just think it's so powerful that within 10 weeks of including the fermented foods consistently, there were, these drastic improvements, with gut bacteria and with inflammatory markers.
Yeah. And I think to that point too, sometimes it doesn't feel great to go from 0 to 60 in terms of fiber intake. If it's like, I don't eat enough fiber and I'm going to go from, 5 to 10 grams a day to the recommended 35 grams. And it's like, oh my God, I haven't gone to the bathroom in days. What happened? So that massive increase in over a very short period of time sometimes doesn't feel great. So we want to do things gradually, where when we utilize probably both, maybe increasing in fiber and utilize things like fermented foods, which, as Jilly said, are a little easier to digest, to break down, because we've got kind of the bacteria that's almost like pre-digesting them, which is maybe a weird way to think about it, but helps to kind of shift the gut so that we can actually tolerate more fiber, because then we have more of the beneficial bacteria to help us to break down those indigestible fibers and kind of help that process. So if we can kind of like slow and steady increase in fiber and slow and steady increase in fermented foods, we're really going to get the best of both worlds. And we're not going to have that discomfort in terms of shifting the gut environment too quickly or more quickly than the gut environment can actually adjust.
100%. That's a great point. And I think it's really the two of these things together that are going to be so impactful, like Abby's describing. But it's always important to take it slow, not to blast the gut, to really start from where you're at and, kind of move slowly from there. And I think with fermented foods, what's also really powerful, though, is the fact that you don't need a lot, right? fermented foods, to take a step back too, sources or some of our favorite sources of fermented foods are going to be things like kimchi, sauerkraut, really any traditionally fermented veggies. And with these things, you only need, 1 to 2 forkfuls. And that's something that you can incorporate, quite easily and doesn't take, a whole lot of effort. Might feel small and not so impactful in the moment, but, like we've just said, this can make a really big difference in not, a tremendous amount of time. Other great sources of fermented foods are going to be things like kefir, Greek or coconut yogurt, also, sheep's milk, goat's milk, products in terms of, kefirs and the fermented goat's milk, sheep's milk products. And miso, that's another favorite one, fermented miso, which you can make, salad dressing with and, utilize in all sorts of fun ways as well.
Perfect. Yeah, I think my favorite thing to educate people on is how we don't need a whole bowl of it. Because someone's like, oh, it's really intense. I don't know if I really like the flavor. It's like, can you do 1 to 2 tablespoons of it? They're like, oh, I think I could do that. I had that on my avocado toast this morning, a maybe tablespoon and a half, just on top for that little bit of acid bite. And it's great. And that's a full day's worth of ferments. If that's all you have tolerance for or all you're really interested in. Maybe you don't put it on breakfast if it's not your favorite, but big fan.
It's a great way to kind of add the acidity, the bitter sourness to meals. And it can kind of actually really enhance something like avocado toast that needs a little pizzazz, right?
I think so. All right. And cruising into our last and final on our highlights of functional food is bone broth. We couldn't complete this list without talking about bone broth. So bone broth is a gut healing, mineral-rich protein source that can help do a myriad of things. Strengthen the gut lining. So again, we're kind of talking about healing leaky gut, that trendy term, intestinal permeability, through really the key proteins. We've got gelatin, we've got collagen, we've got the amino acids of proteins. And when we break down the gut lining because of inflammation or stress, we really need to replete the proteins and those building blocks to help to rebuild that gut lining. Protein is the biggest thing that's going to build it. Bone broth is a great source of that. Helping us to promote energy and balance blood sugar because it's providing us with minerals. So we've got the calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, sulfur, sodium, and much more. That list goes on and on. It can help even outside of the gut in terms of lubrication for joints and kind of the cushions between bones. Gelatin and collagen help with those. Improve skin elasticity and collagen production. So we can really see a tremendous amount of benefit. We even can see anti-inflammatory benefits. So now we're kind of working in that hormone realm too, gut and hormones. So it's really helpful for anyone with a gut, anyone with hormones. But I would say in particular, if you're experiencing kind of inflammation in your gut lining, so maybe that kind of acid reflux, or you're experiencing pain or burning, so it could be upper GI or lower GI. I'd say even for constipation, loose stools, or distension, leaky gut, if you've been told or suggested that you might have leaky gut, or maybe you're like, I see a lot of these symptoms. Do I have it? Bone broth is going to be a great thing to incorporate into your life regularly as a way to heal that dynamic, as well as even prevent that dynamic to keep you, if you're in kind of robust gut health, robust health. And really because it's providing those accessible nutrients, helping to rebuild that lining, as we talked about, from that inflammation and stress, and those kind of minerals and electrolytes that we're getting. So we're getting a lot of bang for our buck. So are there some things that you want to add, Jillian? I can see you.
I was just going to add that because it's a rich source of all these amino acids, specifically glycine, I love recommending it to pregnant women because glycine is conditionally essential. So we need a lot more of it, and we have to obtain it from food for, supporting the growth and development of the baby. And oftentimes in pregnancy, I find there is a greater aversion to just protein foods in general. And we're mostly going to get, glycine and other important amino acids in high amounts from your bone-in, skin-on, animal products. So if you're someone that is looking to increase, the glycine, the amino acid intake, just kind of incorporating bone broth can be a really approachable way to get more of that in if you're feeling, an aversion to proteins.
is a very good point. And that's also where we're building collagen from. So as we kind of expand in terms of pregnancy or really looking for like those aesthetic benefits, we're really getting it from so many different angles. Love that. Some of my kind of favorite ways of incorporating bone broth is, I mean, you could use like sip on warm bone broth as like kind of a bridge snack, maybe between like meals. If you're kind of mildly hungry, maybe you add in some like veggies or roasted veggies into it to kind of bulk it up. Or sometimes I add in like diced avocado if I'm like going out to dinner, but it's like that. I have like a 8 p.m. dinner that's like crazy late for me, but it's like 7 or 6:30. And I'm like, I'm starving and I'm not going to make it to dinner. Like, what can I eat that's not going to wreck my appetite? Something like a bone broth with some like diced avocado in it, like usually hits the spot, kind of savory. You can actually cook some of our grains in. So using it as part of your like pasta water. I like lentil pasta and I'll mix kind of bone broth as like half water, half bone broth. If you're cooking quinoa or millet, you can kind of bulk up some of the protein and the minerals in those grains that you're cooking. Certainly adding it to soups as kind of the base. So bone broth as opposed to like a vegetable broth can help to bulk up, or even half and half. It doesn't have to be a full base of bone broth. We can use it kind of complementary. There also are some really great like protein powders that are bone broth. So Paleo Valley, it's kind of one of our favorite brands to kind of suggest to clients. And they have some kind of bone broth powders that can be used as in smoothies. They have some like flavored bone broth powders. They have some unflavored bone broth powders. So we can use those a little bit more from like convenience standpoint. Certainly mixing them into smoothies, but you can also even mix them into other like kind of the base of even like cereal, like milk to your cereal or something like that. So that we're adding a little bit more protein and minerals if we're, feeding kids cereal, and maybe there's not a lot of protein in some of those cereals. So we can kind of add that by mixing it into the milk before we're serving it. And maybe they're none the wiser for it, or maybe they're in on it. Who knows?
Something else I'll do is, we haven't talked about this too much, but I encourage clients to not have caffeine on an empty stomach related to supporting the gut and hormones. And sometimes clients really do just enjoy having like that, cup of coffee or, a black tea or something in the morning before food. And what we'll have them do is jazz it up and add, your bone broth protein. So you're getting, the protein in there as a great buffer in terms of, providing a little bit of stability for the adrenals, for the blood sugar, and you're also getting those really great beneficial amino acids.
I love that. Then we're able to have for kind of right in the morning and not, send ourselves for a loop.
Yes.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Well, that is the end of our functional food list. We hope that was helpful, that was insightful. Maybe there's some foods that you're like, check, already eating those, or some maybe new introductions of foods that you haven't really thought about. Add them to your grocery list and kind of get creative. We'd love to hear about how you're incorporating these foods over on Instagram. Your Body Has Your Back. We always want to hear about how the podcast kind of gets lived out in your lives. It's really one of our most favorite things. So definitely let us know if there is a food that you are enjoying from this list and how you're enjoying it.
We cannot wait to see, and just start with one. Choose one, have fun with it, and, share for inspiration and share because we would love to see.
All right, everyone. Toodles.